Hey guys, MoiDawg here, and today we're going to be going over one of the new factions added to squad in V50, the Russian Airborne Forces, better known as the VDV. This Russian subfaction will share a few things in common with the Russian ground forces, but they will have unique character models, as well as having their own brand new weapons and vehicles, creating a unique playstyle heavily reliant on amphibious warfare. There's a lot to cover here, so let's just dive right into it. First off, you might notice that the uniform for the VDV is pretty similar to the Russian ground forces, with the main difference being the addition of the distinct white and blue striped undershirt, as well as the squad leader character model having the bright blue beret. Additionally, they will have their unique flag on the minimap, but deployables and vehicle camo will be in line with Russia as well. When you actually play as the VDV, your standard rifle will no longer be the AK-74M, but instead the modern, brand new AK-12. It has two fire modes, semi-auto and fully automatic, and has a brand new distinctive sound. Now, I'm sure some of y'all who are actually familiar with this weapon platform are wondering about it having the 2-round burst. And although at release we just have these two fire modes, I have been told by the devs that burst fire will be added in a future update soon. But for now, just enjoy semi and full auto. Now, the handling for the weapon feels pretty similar to the AK-74M, and if you're used to firing that, you shouldn't really have an issue with this. However, unlike the 74M, this weapon has quite a few loadouts with foregrips, which should theoretically reduce recoil and make it easier to use full auto. Now, I did some testing and noticed that it looks like the current iteration of the AK-12 that at least I was able to use has the same recoil no matter if you use the foregrip or not. And when talking to the devs, they informed me that if this is a bug, it will be addressed soon, but it is completely possible that the early access version that I had was just incorrect, and the foregrip should actually make your weapon handling better. Either way, just wanted to let you guys know, but assume that in the future that these foregrips will make the weapon much easier to use. The AK-12's iron sights can be adjusted up to 800 meters, although I doubt you'd ever actually use those. The sight picture itself does feel like a combination of the M4 and the AK, and personally I feel like it takes up a little too much of the screen for me. So as much as I like using iron sights with the other AKs, I don't think I'm going to be using it on the 12 too often. For short range, the VDV will be using the 1P87 hollow sight. This sight has an extremely clean sight picture, and it's a really great surprise to see included in the game. The sight itself doesn't take up too much of your screen, and it does seem a little thinner, so I think this is definitely an improvement from the 1P63 that the Russian ground forces have. However, for long range, just like the Russian ground forces, you will be using that familiar 1P78. Now, after playing around with all this, I don't know if this is just because the AK-12 is the new shiny toy, and maybe I'm a little biased because it's new. The weapon did feel a bit better than the AK-74M. Still, both of these rifles are incredibly similar, and in the real world, the AK-12 is essentially an incremental upgraded version of the AK-74M. The real benefits of this rifle are supposed to be things like the accessory rail, which allows for things like the foregrip, as well as the retractable stock, so these minor handling improvements should be expected. Either way, it's great to see the AK-12 added in, and I would have been a little disappointed if we got another faction with simply the AK-74 again. The VDV's melee weapon, however, is strangely still the AK-74 bayonet, and the faction's pistol is the MP443. Just like the Russian ground forces, the VDV will also use the RDG-2 as their smoke grenade and the RGD-5 frag grenade. So, moving on to the kits, let's start off with the squad leaders. The VDV call SLs Senior Riflemen, and all three Senior Rifleman kits have the AK-12 with the GP25 underbarrel grenade launcher equipped with 2 frags and 6 smokes. The optics are in line with other conventional factions, and as SL1 you'll be using the iron sights, SL2 will have the new 1P87 hollow sight, and SL3 will get the 1P78 scope. All three kits will also have your pistol as a sidearm, binoculars, and a rally. For Crewmen and Pilots, you'll be using the AK-12 with iron sights and have access to the repair kit. Crewmen will also have white smoke and a shovel, while pilots will have no shovel but orange smoke. For medics, Medic 1 will be using the AK-12 and 1P87 hollow sights with a pistol sidearm and 3 mags, as well as 2 white and 2 orange smoke and a pair of binoculars. Medic 2 will have the longer range 1P78 optic, a pistol with only 2 magazines, 2 white and 2 orange smoke as well, and no binos. Both kits of course will have the standard 9 bandages and medical pouch for healing. All riflemen will be using the AK-12 with a foregrip. ship, with Rifleman 1 using iron sights and equipped with 2 frag grenades and binoculars. Rifleman 2 using the 1P87 hollow sights also has 2 frag grenades and binoculars, and Rifleman 3 will be using the 1P78 optic with only 1 frag grenade and no binoculars. All 3 kits will also have access to the ammo bag for resupply. For Autoriflemen, both of the squad and direct fire kits are pretty much unchanged from the Russian ground forces. Autorifleman 1 will be using the RPK with iron sights and have a frag grenade with binoculars, while Autorifleman 2 will use the RPK with the 1P78 optic and no frag grenade or binos. Both will also have the pistol if you need it for a sidearm. For Grenadiers, you have the AK-12 with the 1P87 hollow sight and the GP-25 underbarrel grenade launcher. You can range this from 50 to 500 meters, as well as 200 meters high and 300 meters high, which will actually fire the grenade like a mortar round. You'll have an inventory of 10 frag grenades and 6 white smokes, as well as binoculars. Now, the biggest deviation from the Russian ground forces with the VDV is actually in the anti-tank kits. Lat 1 will be using the AK-12 and the 1P87 hollow sight, but instead of the RPG-7 with PGO optics, they will be using the iron sight RPG. This is the same RPG you would previously only be able to use as insurgents or a regular militia, but as an interesting bounce mechanic, Lat 1 will actually be getting 2 heat rounds and 2 frag rounds. Lat 2 will be using the AK-12 and 1P78 optic, and they go back to using the RPG-7 with PGO scope. They will still have the standard loadout of 1 heat and 2 frag rounds, however. But as a whole, between the 2 of the kits, I really like this change, and it makes it feel as if the light anti-tank players are going to be that much more deadly out in the field. The RPG-26, which the Russian ground forces have, is not bad for an anti-tank weapon, but it's not nearly at the same level as the RPG-7, even if you just have to use the iron sights. Now, a squad with 2 lat players can actually fire up to 3 heat rounds and 4 frag rounds without rearming, which is huge. For heavy anti-tank players, you will now be able to play as the first hat kit with a long-range optic. Hat 1 will be using the AK-12 and the 1P78 scope, but to counter your infantry capabilities, you will be using the RPG with iron sights as well, with 1 heat round and 1 of the big boy tandem rounds. Hat 2, on the other hand, will be using the 1P87 hollow sight, and instead have 2 tandem rounds and 2 frag rounds. These hat changes are really unique, and if you haven't used the iron sight RPGs that much, the heat rounds have an effective range of 500 meters, but the tandem rounds are good up to 150 meters. These tandems are very heavy, and they have a tendency to drop short of their target, so do make sure to aim a little bit higher than you think you need to. Although these tandem rounds are harder to use, I really like that these kits are not just simple carbon copies of the Russian ground forces, and it should actually increase the skill ceiling for the VDV anti-tank players by forcing more people to use these more difficult RPG-7 tandems. Now, our next kit is something I don't think anyone saw coming, and it is the Scout, and as a Scout, you'll be using the AS-VAL and OKP-7 optic. You'll have a pistol as your sidearm, no frag grenades, and binoculars. The AS-VAL is one of those fan favorite weapons, and in squad, I think they absolutely nailed it. It's incredibly fun to shoot, has easy to manage recoil, and the OKP-7 optic is extremely clean. I think this will be a much more effective kit than something like a marksman, and I wouldn't be surprised to see every single squad running a Scout now. It's just an extremely fun weapon to use, and I look forward to some nice flanks and mag dumps with this thing. As a machine gunner, you'll be using the PKP, but instead of optics, you will simply have iron sights, making it on par with Blue 4 kits like the Canadians and British. Now, it's still a PKP, so it will shred if you're in close to medium engagements, and the iron sights are fairly clean, but don't expect to be as effective as you would be with Russia and the 1P78 optic. In addition, you do get binoculars to help you find targets at longer ranges, and you do have a pistol as a sidearm. Combat engineers will use the AK-12 with iron sights and will be able to place up to 3 anti-tank mines and 1 SC-7 explosive. They'll also have access to deploying sandbags and razor wire outside of a fob radius and have your standard repair kit with binoculars. Finally, we have another unexpected kit with the Sniper. As a sniper, you'll be using the brand new bolt-action rifle, the SV98M. Another fan favorite bolt-action rifle, the SV98M comes with a 1P69 4x optic. This, I think, has one of the best sights in game, and it's extremely fun to shoot. And with your 10-round magazine, you can actually have a pretty decent rate of accurate fire when you're bipoded. Now, you may notice on the weapon itself, there is a carrying handle, but that is just a visual thing. And although it is standard in the Russian military, in game, you're actually just going to be running around with the rifle in your 2 hands. Additionally, you can also range this weapon up to 1,000 meters. So if you you do ever see someone proned way off in the distance or maybe on a weapon emplacement, feel free to bipod and take some extremely accurate shots. For your medium and short range engagements, I do think it's going to be kind of difficult to use, which is obviously a good thing for balance reasons, but in general I actually like this and prefer it to the Canadian Timberwolf. The weapon model itself looks awesome, it's fun to use, and I'm glad we finally have another bolt action in the game. Now, moving on to the VDV's vehicles, the faction has a brand new set of armored personnel carriers. These are small, fast-moving, and amphibious BTR variants, with the first ones being the BTR-D Logistics and Transport. The Logi version can fit up to 2,000 supply, split 1,000 each by default, and can only fit 3 people: the driver, commander, and a rear-facing passenger. Now, one unique aspect of these BTRs though are that they not only have drive smoke, you can actually select to use smoke launchers as well, allowing the vehicle to both cover itself or swap over and choose to cover deploying infantry. The Transport variant can fit a full squad, has 600 ammo, and 2 unique forward-facing PKT machine guns. These tiny ports allow for gunners to fire in a 33-degree cone in front of the vehicle, and although it isn't much, it is a nice little defensive option as you move around. Just make sure someone is watching behind you. Now, there are also a couple other variants, including an open-top cord MG variant that has the 2 forward-facing gunners as well, and the BTR-MDM variant with a PKT remote weapon system. This larger, more protected BTR has 1 forward-facing PKT instead of 2. And the sight picture for the remote weapon system is actually pretty nice, with 360-degree visibility, a 2x zoom, and plenty of ammo. Finally, the last BTR variant is this absolute beast, the BTR-ZD Anti-Air. It has 2 enclosed forward-facing PKT machine guns, 1 open-top cord heavy MG, and a manned ZSU anti-air gun, which is the first conventional AA gun in the game. In total, you could potentially have 4 of your squad members on some kind of weapon while driving around in this thing, and I absolutely love that. It still does have that super thin armor being an APC, but still, this is an incredible little beast of a vehicle, and I can't wait to see people meme around in it. Now, for your harder hitting vehicles, the VDV have the BMD-1 and the BMD-4. The BMD-1 is essentially a BMP-1 without the Malyutka ATGM, and you come equipped with 24 heat rounds, 16 frag rounds, and a PKT coax. Just like the BTRs, you also get 2 PKT whole MG spots and plenty of room for passengers. As a whole, this vehicle is not bad. It does feel very BMP-1E, which does feel outdated a lot of the times, but get to a stable firing platform and you can actually do some work with it. The BMD-4, on the other hand, is more or less an amphibious-focused BMP-3. It has the dual-barrel 30mm and 100mm cannons, and the autocannon fires both AP and frag rounds. If you want a lot more anti-infantry capability, swap to the larger 100mm cannon, and you can use the frag rounds to better take out these softer targets. For more armored targets like tanks, you actually have 3 Bastion ATGMs, which also fire out of this main gun. And when using them, they feel similar in handling to the Reflex. Gunners also get a PKT coax machine gun, while the commander only has a stabilized command hatch for viewing. Overall, I really like the BMD-4, and the gunner sights feel good and are easy to read, which I think is really important for a mobile IFV. You have your PKT distances on the left, the 30mm is right in the center, and your 100mm ranges are on the right. If you use the final third stage zoom, you can only see the 30mm marks, making it much easier to fire the round that you will most likely be using most of the time. It's incredibly fast, it's incredibly mobile, and I think it's a great addition to the game. Now, finally, another brand new vehicle is the Sprut SDM-1 mobile gun system, which is technically classified as a self-propelled amphibious tank destroyer, and it's intended to be much more mobile than a tank while still offering plenty of firepower in exchange for less armor. It comes equipped with a 125mm main gun with 14 AP Sabo rounds, 6 heat rounds, and 14 frags, has a PKT coax for anti-infantry, and can launch 2 Reflex ATGMs. Since it's both fast and amphibious, it can pop up where tanks really can't reach, allowing for nice ambush and hit and run attacks. Gunners should be familiar with the weapon system as a whole, since it's essentially a T-72 gunner's view, while commanders do get a nice remote weapon system that resembles a Tiger. As a whole, this vehicle is something I actually never imagined we'd see in squad, and I'm honestly going to try and get into it every match I can, since it just looks way too much fun to use. Now, the VDV don't actually have any new vehicles when it comes to tanks or helicopters. The T-72B3 is their main battle tank, and although they still use the Mi-8 hip, it does have a nice new paint job. You will also be using standard Russian vehicles like the Kamaz trucks and BRDM scout cars, but you will not have access to the Tiger armored cars. Now at release, you can play the VDV on 12 maps with 26 different playable layers, one seeding layer, and of course try some things out for yourselves on Jensen's Range and the Pacific Proving Grounds. But that just about wraps up everything with the VDV. I think this is an insanely well thought out and designed faction, and it both feels familiar and unique, which I think is a really good thing when it comes to sub-factions. You get a lot of Russian vibes, but the reliance on the tracked amphibious vehicles and the new infantry kits make them play very differently than your typical Russian ground forces. I think players will actually begin to prefer the AK-12s to the AK-74Ms due to the better optics and foregrips, while things like the Sprut and the meme machine AA BTRs are just going to be flat out fun. Additionally, if you're an optimist like me, some of these additions might actually mean we'll be getting more varied vehicles in the future, since the BMD-4 is more or less a BMP-3, and the Sprut mobile gun system is basically a Russian version of the American M1-128 mobile gun system. Now, I'm not saying anything is confirmed, but just the VDV alone shows me that the devs are more than happy to add more varied vehicles in the future. But that's about it. Do you like the new weapons like the AS-Val and the SV-98? Is the AK-12 everything you wanted it to be? Or maybe you're more interested in specializing in becoming a tank destroyer main with the new Sprut? Let me know down in the comments below, and if you liked the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more. But that's it for me. Until next time, peace.